Okay, so here we go. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting like right in the middle of my usual presentation when I start to introduce this whole concept. But remember, we're thinking about why do people do what they do? And why don't they do what they know they want to do or they need to do or they're supposed to do? Most people don't even know. They don't even know they don't know. So what we need to do is talk about behaviors and our thinking. And let's start with this very odd little graphic here. You know, when I first looked at it, I had a laugh because I thought, what in the world? You mean this is what we're talking about? But I have to tell you, this is the most valuable lesson that I've learned. You know, it gives us an image of the mind. It eliminates our confusion of the mind because our mind is not our head, our mind is not our brain is energy, right? So when we talk about why we do what we do and trying to help people do what they want to do and what they need to do, we have to look at how the mind and body connection operates. And again, it's not about, magically or mystically attracting things into your life, although it kind of is. So here we go. Now, the top half of this circle is called the conscious mind, okay? And then we look at the bottom half as being the subconscious mind, and then finally the body, and the body is the instrument of the mind. So, when I study with Bob Proctor, my mentor, and he said, "Who are you, Jane?" And I say, "Well, I'm Jane." And he said, "You're not Jane, that's your name." And I kind of pointed to myself and I said, "Well, this is me." And he said, "No, your body's not you." So let's continue. When we talk about this and apply it to thinking into results, we look at the body here and we have to think about the symptoms or the results. Now look, results are symptoms. So balance sheets are symptoms, income is a symptom, relationships are symptoms. And we have to look at what's the cause of the symptoms. What is the cause of all those results? We've got all kinds of behavioral scientists that treat behavior, but that doesn't change the results. So we say, of course, that behavior causes results. Wouldn't you agree? But really, behavior is the secondary cause, and you have to go to the primary cause, and that's what thinking into results is talking about. Okay, so again, now the conscious mind is the thinking mind. Let's look at this, right? And the subconscious mind will be a little different. But now here's the thinking mind. We also call this the educated mind because it's part of our intellect. Got that? Okay, now the bottom half, the subconscious mind. This is the emotional mind. These two parts operate quite differently as you might imagine, and it's not as easy as left brain, right brain. Here's where we start. You see, the conscious mind has the ability to choose. So there's power flowing to it and through us, and as this power flows into our consciousness, we got the ability to choose. To choose what? Well, to think anything you want to think. And you might have heard of Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. Again, he was the Viennese psychiatrist who spent the war years in a concentration camp. I don't suppose anybody was subjected to more physical and intellectual abuse than he and his peers were, and yet he spoke about one of the last of human freedoms, and that was no one can cause us to think something that we don't want to think. We have the ability to choose. We have the ability to accept or reject. You can accept what I'm saying or you can reject it. Now, I'm suggesting don't do either. I'm suggesting that we really evaluate things. I'm suggesting that you don't accept it, you don't reject it. You really evaluate it and then think, gee, if we install these ideas in the company, if I was just to take and invest a few more dollars in every employee each week over, let's say a year, what would happen? Well, I'm going to tell you that the results would absolutely shock you because we're going to show people how to accept the good ideas and reject the bad. Again, the conscious mind is the part of the mind where we originate ideas. That's where creativity, creation starts. And that's in my life and yours. So I originate the ideas. But then the power is within to execute it. Now see here, the subconscious mind. We said that it's the emotional mind, but it must accept. It has no ability to reject an idea. And that's really an important point. So the subconscious mind cannot differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. And that's huge. So you see, when we start to get emotionally involved in idea, well, that's what Wernher von Braun did. Remember the scientist, and Kennedy said to him, what will it take to send a man to the moon and bring him back home again? And von Braun said, the will to do it. Remember the word will. The will do it. The will is a mental faculty, but we're going to talk about that. It's a really important part and a powerful part of our personality. Again, the subconscious mind has to accept whatever you give to it. Your company is really nothing more than the manifestation of an idea that somebody was involved in, right on back through. So remember, we have the ability to create an image in our mind, right? We turn it over to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is universal. What that means is once we get emotionally involved with it, the idea is expressed through the body. Now, since the body is the instrument of the mind, that's what moves us into action, that produces the results that we get. Now, it seems so obvious and so simple. But again, people get stuck, right? Why do they get stuck? Well, this is what I'm going to show you. Okay, so take these next two drawings here. They're going to represent the same person. So the one on the left will represent you now. And then the one on the right represents you when you were an infant, when you first arrived on this planet. Now, there's a big difference. Now, stay with me here. We're gonna have to change the picture. You see, when you first arrived, you didn't have the conscious mind developed, all right? So we just eliminate that. The subconscious mind, there it is, it's wide open. And again, it must accept anything you give to it. It doesn't have the ability to accept or reject those ideas. It must accept. So whatever's going on around you, the ideas, the thoughts, the images that were going on around you as you were a baby, it went into the baby's mind. That's you and me and Harry or Betty who works at the next desk. It's Joe the salesperson, Jeannie, you're the salesperson. The point is the mind is programmed. And we were programmed repeatedly, right, with the same thoughts and images over and over again, day in and day out, week in, month out, year in and year out. And this happened for the first 3 or 4 years of our lives. And the information that was being programmed into our mind then built our self-image. You have people in the company who have a very strong image. They just know they can do certain things. And then there's other ones who are pretty sheepish or quiet, withdrawn. They don't think they can do very much. Well, why is that? Do you know it's been established that a child raised with lots of praise becomes very confident, right? A child raised with lots of criticism is very insecure when they grow up. Now, I'm not saying that this is all from when we were children, but I'm just making the point of how this all happens. And so we can understand it so that we can change what we're doing now. So again, look over on the left side of the screen. That's you now, okay? And you have in your subconscious mind what's called a paradigm. The paradigm, it's a multitude of habits, right? They're fixed. They were fixed there before you even had the ability to think, remember? So here's the child, here's the paradigm, okay? You can think of yourself or you can think of somebody else in this, but as you reach the age of reason, okay, And that's when the conscious faculties of the mind begin to develop and things start to happen. So your conscious mind starts to develop, and but that paradigm is still in there. All the things you learned, all the habits that were fixed in there, and then we start getting from the outside. And we'll look at these that look like little antennae, and we'll say that there are senses, right? So you can see and hear, smell, taste, touch, right? Now, here's what you want to grasp. You see the paradigm? This person has been programmed from little on up, from birth, to go by what they see, what they hear, what they smell. All of the direction comes from the outside world. Now, heavy hitters, the successful ones, I'm talking about the big producers, they operate differently. They're not directed by these things from the outside. They go inside. You may have heard in the past, go to your inner closet, close the door, go to your sanctum, go to your inner quiet voice from within. But people like that have been programmed and trained, and they practice this. What I'm talking about is about the masses now who, we live through our senses, what comes from the outside. There's really, they say, only about 3% who operate differently. But most of us operate the way I've just described here. So you see, the information's coming from the outside. You remember one of the previous graphics I pointed out that the conscious mind was also the intellectual mind, thinking mind. Napoleon Hill, who I study a lot, pointed out, now keep in mind, he worked with, 500 of the most successful people of the time, and he did research on this his entire life. He wrote Laws of Achievement, of course, Think and Grow Rich, but he said an educated person is not necessarily the person with an abundance of general or even specialized knowledge. An educated person is a person who has so developed the faculties of his mind that they can acquire anything they want, or its equivalent, without violating the rights of others. This is where it gets really interesting, so stay with me, because if we want to be changing these paradigms, because that's where we get stuck, that's where the red light comes on, it stops us in our track, it gets us stuck. If we want to change those paradigms, we're going to have to start looking at the faculties of the mind. What are they? If you asked, a whole room full of educators, they probably couldn't tell you all of them, right? So let's just get into them. Here we go. So perception. We have perception, and that's what space scientist von Braun was talking about. Perception and the will to do things. We have imagination, memory. How about memory? Do you ever hear people, and maybe you've said it, oh boy, I have such a bad memory. Well, there is no such thing as a bad memory. It's a memory. You have your memory. You just have to learn how to use it correctly. And going back up, the perception is our point of view. Two people can look at the same thing and see something totally different. This was true in my household growing up with 5 brothers and my father. Ooh, there were lots of different perceptions going around. But as you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Can I repeat that? As far as perception, as you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. I just love that. Imagination. We're discouraged in school, and really early on when we start school, and they say we're not paying attention, and the child is punished. And why do we have such large organizations and real small creative departments? Yeah, it's not a valued faculty of the mind, and it's so important as a way to get rid of these paradigms. Some of you might know my work with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and attention deficit disorder, and my own daughter was labeled ADD, and thank goodness, thank goodness for imagination and drive and will. Today she designs structurally sound but graphically pleasing distribution packaging for a major candy company, right? Where would she have been without her imagination? Another really important faculty of the mind is intuition. That gut feeling. A lot of people might talk about it as a right brain, but it's not really a right brain. It's a faculty of the mind, and you can learn to use it. The other is reason, okay? How well we reason. And if we go back to think about when thoughts come into our mind, don't accept them, don't reject them. Think about them before we do. And if it's a good one, you betcha, push it right on down to that emotional subconscious level. Now, what we have to understand, again, is if we're going to change this paradigm, this red light, this thing that makes us get stuck, this fixed habit, we have to do it through the use of all these intellectual factors, right? The perception, will, imagination, memory, intuition, and reason. And what we're going to do is cause this paradigm just to get the heck out of the way. And then we're going to change. And we begin to use the subconscious mind the way it was meant to be used, through the aid of all these intellectual factors. And that's what this whole program, this whole Thinking into Results program does. It shows people how to use what they've already got. It's just wonderful. That's why you have smartphones today. That's why we have, HD television. That's why we have space travel. And that's why I can touch a little phone in my pocket and send a message to 500 of you all at the same time in the same space. As soon as I touch send, there it goes. So where did that come from? It was always here. We just weren't aware of how to do it before. Think about the Wright brothers. The way to fly airplanes was always here. They just had to figure out how to do it. Well, guess what? The way to raise productivity in companies is already here. We just have to figure out how to do it. Look at this for a moment. You and I have the ability to create things. We have the ability to think, right? So we create the image. And then we impress the image upon our subjective mind, our subconscious mind. And when you do this with repetition, and emotion, that's when we act on it. We act on those ideas and get the result we're looking for. Oh my gosh, I want you to think about what might happen if everyone in your company really, really understood this. I'll tell you what'll happen. It'd be a lot more fun, number one. And people would not work anywhere near as hard as they are now, but they'd produce much better results. That sounds good, doesn't it? There'd be more cohesiveness and, of course, teamwork and team effort. It would be an everyday kind of creative adventure. But what happens is this goes right to the bottom line. The results that you're getting go right to the bottom line, because after all, you already have your expenses taken care of. You already have your overhead taken care of. All you're doing is helping people to think and get better results. And that's what we like to do. Now I'm going to close here and not go on too much further, but let's just look at this very quickly. There's only two ways I know to change a paradigm, those red lights and where we're stuck in our lives. One could be an emotional impact. So that's, sounds like you go to the doctor and he tells you, you have some sort of disease, and wow, you're like, impact, I guess I better start eating right and watch my cholesterol and switch to light beverages or whatever it's going to be, right? Boom, it happens. Other emotional impacts. Come home and your spouse is gone and took the kids, and there's an emotional one. Aha, what happened here? Something's got to change. But the other way to change a paradigm, and this is what we work on, is repetition, right? Repetition. And this is the basis behind this program, Thinking into Results, and that's what I've done over the years, right? A lot of you have watched me. The repetition of these ideas. So, my mentor, Bob Proctor, this is what he did for years and years and years, and took his salary from $4,000, up to $1 million over the years, just by studying a book. Well, it wasn't just by studying a book. It was, again, if I back up here, he created the image of his mind of what he wanted. He got emotionally involved with that image. He used his intellectual factors of imagination and intuition and reason, all of those, and finally acts on the idea to get the results, right? And it's repetition, repetition. What happens is you substitute those old ideas that we were raised with, and even, if we've been in the workforce 30 years, all those ideas that we've come to keep that hold us back. And repetition of studying the information and just thinking in a new way is going to get you the results you need. Now, I'm gonna hop ahead quick because I promised you I'd only keep you for a short while. One day we'll go through this idea that shows you how repetition actually helps you to get through and think into results. So again, what we're talking about here again, we're talking about getting results. If you know me, you know my energetic style and magnetic style, and I'm backed by two of really great top intellects. Sandy Gallagher, she's an attorney and top corporate executive who studied Bob Proctor's material and then put it more into a company or corporate kind of flavor, if you will. And this program I use with both individuals and in companies. It's great. I work with the folks individually to really figure out what they want, because this is going to work for them personally, and they bring a better person to work. You know what you're going to get right here, better results, right? It's just great. But Bob Proctor is still my mentor. He's been playing around with this information since 1961. That's when I was born. So they work all over the world. It's just shocking to me that more and more people aren't in tune with this. So I'd like to get you in tune with it, right? I'd like to sit down and talk with you about it. There's my phone number, 507-0186, right? So I also have the Lunch and Learns that you can watch. It's over on YouTube. Give me a holler. I'll send you the link to that. And be glad to come in and do, again, a live Lunch and Learn for your group, your next staff meeting, so you can really dig into the specifics about this program and how thinking gets us the results we're looking for, right? I've been studying this and I just love it. I love this program. I think it's the best one around. My thinking is, that it's absolutely a shame that people don't know how to use their potential. And if you know me, I've been working with this for 18 or so years now. And it's really been my passion and my purpose to shine light for people to use their potential. It's a shame that most people go from the cradle to the casket and their gifts are still in them and they never find out who they are. We can have magnificent lives. We can do work as individuals and as companies to make life more meaningful. And after all, isn't that what it's all about? So forget about everything you learned in the past and let me come in and talk to you, and just like that, everything will change for you. This is Jane Miller, and I thank you.